Hey everyone, it's Christopher Swan, and welcome to this week's episode of Living Your Journey. Each week, I get the amazing opportunity to chat with people that love what they do in life. They understand their passions. Maybe it's a career path or the social impact that they're making. It's kind of like they're following their North Star. Even though their story may change, they understand that they're on their journey every day. This week, I chat with Anna Harris. She's an interior designer based in Los Angeles. In our interview, you'll hear Anna say to me, she felt like she finally found her people when she started to learn interior design. That's because she's worked in IT and finance for a long time previously to jumping into design. But don't let that fool you. Anna says there's creativity in all of that. I originally thought of her story as reinvention because of the IT and finance, but really, it's about discovering and taking advantage of opportunities in life. And those opportunities do not have to be an all or nothing decision, which Anna offers sound advice. Her story: seek interesting and smart opportunities and set experience goals. What a great way to look at work and life. You'll also hear us talk about her take on interior design, finding inspiration, and well, we talk about a lot of many topics. This was a real treat for me to reconnect with a Disney colleague from my past, and Anna is so wonderful and interesting. Okay, let's get into the conversation. Anna, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Thanks, Christopher.
So I feel like this is a conversation that is like some weird full circle thing because like our past shared employment, our shared hometown, and then we both have branched out into these like kind of unexpected paths. Even like we haven't talked for a while, but I'm like, I don't know, there's just some kind of weird vibe. Like I felt like we had this when we worked together. Like, wait, we're from the same town? Like just strange things. So anyways, this is, to me, I think this is kind of cool and like odd.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about this. I'm really happy that you asked. And yeah, I agree. I think we have a lot of connections that are kind of unexpected.
Maybe by the end of this, we'll find out like, maybe we're cousins or some weird thing. Well, let me introduce you to the show. They just heard me do an introduction beforehand, but so you're Anna Harris, and you are based in Los Angeles, and you are an interior designer and currently the owner of Anna Harris Designs. You have an extensive background that we're going to, unpack a little bit about other things that you've done. But did I capture everything else? We haven't talked for a while, so maybe there's some new stuff in there that I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of branching out a bit. I'm looking to join a firm, and I've had some nice response to my resume, so I'm hoping that happens sometime soon. So that'll be exciting. It'll be exciting to get kind of back in with a team and more collaboration. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I bet that's really true. I didn't think about that actually even before you said that, but that's really true. If you're doing something on your own, you may work with others or vendors and whatnot, but if you're working independently, you don't get that collaboration piece as much.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny I didn't notice that because I think about that a lot. I work remotely in last multiple jobs, and those are things I miss. I miss my idea partner, like either to bounce something off to say, is this dumb, or just jam an idea.
Yeah, exactly. I really like the feedback too, and the have you thought about this, and what if you did that, and kind of bouncing off different ideas is really makes the end product so much better, right?
Yeah, I agree, because you get a different perspective for that.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting about the firm and how that comes together. So I can't wait to hear about how that turns out.
Yeah.
So for your story, what I'm really interested in is, because I think you have this multifaceted story of reinvention, or at least that's the way I kind of see it, because you have like this IT programmer to finance to interior designer, so which don't all seem related to me. Maybe to the average person. I think I know there's a couple connections there with two pieces of it, but you have many lives that kind of crossed over. So I'm really kind of just curious. Maybe we could just like jump in a little bit and maybe let's talk about like where you're at today. So it's interior designer. Tell us a little bit about like, why that now? Like, how'd you get into that and why that now?
Yeah. I I took some time off in 2004 because of a family injury that needed some help, and I took a design class at UCLA. And the second I arrived at class, I just thought these are my people.
Mm.
I am finally home, and everything was easy and everything was exciting. And I just really thrived in that environment. So I just kept taking classes and ended up with a certificate out of their ARC ID program, which is the interior design program out of their architecture department.
Mm-hmm.
And then but then meanwhile, I was back at corporate with a full-time job. So I was kind of just doing projects on the side and kind of exploring it, but not really, going in with both feet until, the last year and a half or so.
So, so for that point though, so you're still a corporate and you're taking these courses and doing these side projects. Was it at that moment that, because you went to this class and you're like, oh, I'm finally home, my tribe. At what point did it click for you like, oh, I should be going that direction?
Yeah, at first I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know if I'd even try to get the certificate. I was just enjoying myself and
Yeah.
having fun being back in a classroom setting, and the teachers were remarkable, and I felt very comfortable. So it wasn't until I started doing those side projects and I started getting a lot of positive feedback, and not only feedback but referrals,
Mm.
that I kind of thought, well, at some point, maybe I need to think about making a jump. And that point was kind of made for me, I guess, which was lucky, very lucky. I've always been very lucky. So
How do you look at that as luck? Because I think for, when you say it like it was kind of made for you, do you feel like it was luck in the sense that it was like opportunity that you could see, or like, or was it really like, oh, right time, right place?
yeah, a little bit of everything. I had gotten my certificate a couple of years before leaving corporate,
Mm-hmm.
and I I was kind of looking for ways to jump, but I knew it would be a big change in income and commute and whatnot, and I just wasn't sure I was ready to do that. But then when kind of all the changes started coming down, and you could kind of see the horizon
Mm.
and what was going to happen, I felt oddly calm that I had a fallback plan and that this was not necessarily going to be a bad thing.
And
Um,
and you are referring directly to work at corporate, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I was kind of anticipating the change and kind of preparing for it and thinking about, how exactly I would make that final decision.
Mm-hmm. So then what? So you made the decision, you jumped over, and like, this is the part I think, we chatted earlier when I say, like some people are like, I'm going to make a decision. And then a month later, ta-da, I am successful. So, because that happens all the time.
Yeah.
So when making that decision, like, it sounds like, I mean, with like any normal person, you would make a decision and start to go for it. What did that look like for you? Like, what were you aiming for? Because I think, and I am so far from super knowledgeable about interior designer, or in design work, but I would think there are different, specialties within there. So even thinking about what was your next step of, I'm going to aim after this, or how I'm going to build something.
Yeah. Well, to tell you the truth, my first step was to decompress a little bit
Mm.
and take some time off.
Totally.
Yeah. So, me and the cat have become closer friends. And the garden looks really great. And I've really used my museum memberships a lot this
Yeah.
last year.
I,
So that actually really kind of fed into transitioning into design work, because then I kind of had freed up my mind to kind of embrace it in different ways. But yes, you're absolutely right. there's lots of different design. There's residential and hospitality and healthcare. And
Hmm.
yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff. And so I've been focusing in my own practice in residential, which has been really rewarding. All my clients are really, they've got a lot of design savvy, and they're very collaborative, and
Hmm.
they know what they want, and they like nice things. So they've made it, really easy. Um, and then, yeah, now I was telling you earlier that, yeah, I'm actually kind of looking to join a firm because I miss a little bit of that colleague collaboration, and that looking at things more critically and coming up with the really the best plan overall. So I'm looking forward to doing that soon.
And with that firm too, is that still based for residential design, or is that also expanded to other areas for you?
Yeah, the one I was telling you about, it's an architecture firm,
Mm.
and they do high-end residential. They do kind of market flips also in residential,
Mm.
and he'll also do condo development up to 26 units.
Wow. And that last one especially sounds like that would be new territory for you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see how that could be exciting to learn that, because that would just expand it. Especially the more you're exposed to something, the more you'll see what direction you want to go in. If you're like, no, that's not for me, I'll stay more in the, single family home residential, or maybe you want to tackle something bigger.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
And to your point about that kind of like, decompress, I actually think I'm so glad you said it, because I think that's super smart. If you just jump into things as well, you can do that. And if you have the energy and you have the excitement to do it, I think it's smart. But sometimes you said something important there. It was like it fed it, like even the museum, or just the quiet time of weeding the garden, like even though that isn't always super enjoyable, like it can be, because you can, I think when we calm our mind a little bit, and we take in art and interesting things, can help us like get to a better decision on something.
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like, kind of I was going to say the removal of stress. I don't know if you can ever really remove all stress, but um, just a change, and a change of schedule, and a change of habits, good and bad. I think it's been really positive for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it sounds like it too. And that you've also done a little bit of stuff on your own. And now let's see what it's going to feel like to, be within a firm to try something a little bit, different.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to go back a little bit too, because so that's your current world where you're going. And I love all that. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about design later, because I'd love to know a little bit more about the stuff that you love and inspires you. But I want to understand this, like, just because I think it's so fascinating that you started back in the day in programming IT, and that merged into this finance thing. And so, because I definitely get that last part of like, I'm home, like it's my people, right? So, just knowing you after a while, that I could see that you have an analytical mind, but I've also seen you illustrate and draw on my whiteboard in my office.
The happy the happy dentist chair.
That's exactly what I was remembering. so so thinking about that, I'm like, okay, so you've got like these two parts of your brains that work together. What was back in the day, when you first started in this like programming IT kind of space, what was that about for you?
Well, I think I can fill it in if I go back even a little further. So
Okay.
when I went to college, I had a double major in fine art and psychology, um, and a minor in social welfare. And so, of course, with that art degree, I had to immediately go to IT.
Because that makes sense.
Because yeah, there were no jobs at the time, and I really didn't have a really well thought out plan. Like, oh, why didn't I do art administration? I could
Mm,
curate a gallery or something, but no. So that's really how, through necessity,
yeah.
I got into programming, and yeah, because I have pretty equal like math and English skills, I was actually pretty good at it, and moved around. like I do because I'm pretty opportunistic. I'm
Mm-hmm.
more interested in doing different things. So if some opportunity comes up and it's something I've not done before, I tend to say yes. So that was good because that meant I could kind of move around a little bit and try different things. And I came um, to a retail environment in their merchandising systems. So that's all about like the supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really interesting because there's lots of different groups of people that are involved in supply chain logistics. And so kind of getting into all that was like a fun puzzle. And I really kind of enjoyed directing kind of the system applications that could help and maybe even mimic some of these people's jobs. So it was fun and it's creative in a way, but it's creative in a kind of Sudoku math puzzle kind of way.
Yeah, because when you said puzzle, I was like, that does sound interesting. But then you say things like retail management, chain, blah blah. I mean, and you know that I can speak that language and I get it, but but I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds really creative.
Well, you can edit that out later.
No, I love that. I love that you said that too, because I think that's the opportunity, right? It's the, sure, at like face value, when you talk about it, maybe it doesn't sound to some people like it's super interesting. But when you really get into it, it really does like, oh, this is really, how do I make this puzzle work together? And it actually helps people too. So,
Yeah, and there's a certain elegance in programming. You can write something that'll run through 100 records in a minute a record, and because there's 100 records, it doesn't matter. But if you had 1 million records to go through, 1 million minutes of program time would matter.
mm-hmm.
So trying to find the elegance to knock that down to a second a record kind of thing, that's where kind of that engineering kind of creativity comes into play, which was well and good, but wasn't feeding the other part of my brain really at all.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So did that well, you know what? Here's the thing before I move on to this point too. So when you were doing that role, it's so funny because you wrote this down on part of that bio thing, that you sent me, which I actually thought was hilarious and I loved it. And I learned something. Well, I learned multiple things that were new, but I saw something in there. Maybe I knew this beforehand, but I didn't realize is that in 1998 we were both at the stores.
Yeah.
I was like, where was I? What department was I in that
I
I didn't
know.
see you? So
I don't think we knew each other.
no,
Yeah.
we didn't. And the funny thing in 1998 at the Disney stores, I worked with IT all the time. So
That is really funny.
yeah, I worked with Sylvina constantly. And so I just learned this today that I had even a bigger connection with you that I didn't realize. So who knew?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah. So how did that then? Okay, so because I know that can continue on, and not going through like every job, but this merger into the finance world, which kind of hybridish. It's finance, IT. I know you were kind of this related world of SAP and such. Was that about opportunity then? Still like this continuation of, hey, there's a new opportunity to try something.
Absolutely. So I was at the stores for, I think, maybe 2.5 years. And then the company, or corporate rather, decided that they were going to implement this financial and human resources system all across the globe. And everybody would use the same core, accounts payable and
Mm-hmm.
travel and expense reports and stuff. And so they said, do you want to join the team that's going to do this implementation? And I said, sure. I've never done that before. Let's do that. And, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. It was so much work and so rapid fire, but we accomplished so much in no time at all. And it also provided all this opportunity to meet all these people that worked all around the world and actually to go visit. There was a lot of international travel. So that was a great opportunity. And then from that morphed kind of the supportive services that would be needed after the implementation. And that's how there was kind of a division then between IT and finance. And so I ended up going on the finance side as more of a support role than a kind of developer role.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that connection about that pattern too, about, the opportunity. Because if it's the change, right? That's the thing that keeps you interested. So if it
Exactly.
feeds enough of it, where maybe just not feeding the art element or the creativity, but or that kind of creativity, but it still feeds it. I understand that because I think that's a lot of us probably do that.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you did you recognize that that's what it was as you were going through those different roles?
Yes, I've always known I've been more opportunistic than planful, let's say. I, I have a 5-year plan, but it's painted in very broad strokes. It is not, I'm going to be the XYZ within 3 years and the, 1, 2, 3 within 5. I like a meandering path. Um,
I'm curious about that. Then does when you think about like a 5-year plan or so, is it really like, do you have an end state sort of in mind, or an end like maybe not super specific, but it's like a general sense of something or an exploratory?
well, so I think about it now in terms of design. And so what I'm thinking in those broad strokes is that, I'd like to continue to work on, physical design projects for the next 5 to 8 years. But then what I want to do is transition into things like textile development and product development, like make my own furniture type thing. So that's kind of the end state um, of this because got a really nice natural arc to it, and so that's what I'm kind of focusing on as the long term kind of goal.
That's interesting. I asked that too because I think we are fed so many ways to come up with goals, especially when you work in a corporate environment. We hear that a lot about, like, or even that you just said 5-year plan, right? That's like that's such an interview question. Where
Right.
do you see
Right.
yourself in 5 years? So I find it's curious that because the way that that's always presented to so many people, that it's almost like we're all supposed to think the same way and come up with a plan the same way. But the truth is, like, we don't all need to do that. And I think you're just like, what you're sharing is like, you want to try these things and do these things, but maybe that doesn't mean I need to label it out exactly in 5 years. It has to be this exact like title or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the only goal I have is to continue to be opportunistic because it's served me pretty well, I think. Um, yeah, so I'm just going to keep saying yes.
Well, and I think there's some freedom in that as well, that you, I don't know, it just, coming from the corporate space myself, previously, it was a lot of I'm reaching for this goal and this goal, and this goals were usually like different jobs, and sometimes they were titles. And which I found, now I reflect on that, I'm like, oh, who really cares about some of that stuff? But it's almost more like the experience now. And I'm like, I really want to experience this, or I want to learn these things. And those are like, seem like more obtainable and interesting to me than just a thing I'm aiming for.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. And corporate life is changing so much, right?
Yeah.
Companies are flattening, and those kind of opportunities that they're still making goals for kind of don't look like that anymore.
Yeah, I agree. It's especially because I don't think it's, like you said, flattening. It's not hierarchy based as much anymore. And just talking to some another guest, we talked about even just how the world is moving more into a freelance organizations versus always had employees. So that's got to change the way, not only organizations look, but how people are, like, what their goals are now, their aims. I think they're looking at this quality of life, not just like work-life balance, because that's so seems like 10 years ago, but like it's more like I want like the best life I want, and that includes the way I design my life now.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think there's, I don't know, I bring that up because I think there's that it's really fun to hear you talk about these things, because even though you went through and you're, going after these, oh, it was unique, let me try that, let me try this, but you're designing your own life in the way that you want versus some scripted things that we hear so much of.
Right. Yeah.
Well, if you were to look back now, now that you're in this design space and, you're moving forward, do you look back at all and say, like, hey, I wish I would have discovered this earlier? Or does that matter to you at all that you were in the programming IT space at all?
No, it doesn't bother me that I was there. I feel like I learned a lot and got a lot out of those experiences. But in a way, I do wish that I had found this and started earlier, only because I would be that much farther along. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not that you regret it. It's just more like, oh, I wish I would have known more about this.
Yeah. We saw John Irving, the author, speak. It's been a number of years ago now. And there's always like a question and answer at the end. And somebody asked him if one of his earlier works hadn't been successful, would he still be writing? And he said, absolutely, I would still write. And I would probably write all those same books, but it would just have taken me so much longer to do so. Mm-hmm. So, I think of that sometimes, that, the sooner you kind of start this, the farther you can advance.
That's true. Like, and it's a good reality of like, just start, if you're thinking about it, just do it. So you can, because, you can't get there if you don't start, and you'll do more.
Right.
So I am curious about, though, is if you were to like, this is so like an Oprah question, but I'm just curious. I'm going to say it anyways.
Do I have a car?
You're like, and you get a car, and you get a car. All the listeners, you get a car. Anna will buy them all. So what I'm curious about, though, too, like if you were to like even go back, because you talked about this with we were in school for art, but you didn't think about like, oh, I just want to be an artist, and I didn't have like some other kind of sort of plan on how you would, articulate that into a different role. Maybe if you were to go back to like your younger self or something, is there some sort of advice you think about, that you might want to provide yourself before you went through all of these other roles?
Yeah, I think I would have, if I could have tried to have maybe adjust my expectations and just try to be in the art world in some way, and not have limited myself to just saying I'm an artist or nothing. That maybe I could have had, a more creative career. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's interesting. I listened to this podcast called The Culture Department. Funny thing is, it's a local guy in my little town that hosts it, and he hosts these conversations with these different artists about how to be an artist and still make a living at it. And the conundrum most of the time they talk about is that people that are artists get in their own way. They're like, no, I'm an artist. Like that's what I am. And they almost like financial successes and all these other things almost feel like it's evil, because they talk about like, no. A real artist goes after the work they love, and they don't think about backup plans. They don't think about articulating in a different way or hybrid it, because that's not a real artist. And I've never thought of it that way. Does that relate somewhat to kind of like what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If I could have taken, some of those, fine arts things and converted it into, I don't know what, graphic design or, illustrator or administration, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Then, who knows? But, but it's all good.
Yeah, totally. It's not about regret at all. It's more about just like, oh, that's such an understanding now. That you can, I always think it's important to reflect back. You're not regretting. You're just more like, oh, okay, because now I can use that kind of theory or thought today as you move forward. Well, going back, I want to talk about your design a little bit more too, because what I'm really curious about, just because you go to museums and you do all these different things and you take in, I think all these like creatives that are in the world, and I think like interior design fits into that space as well. I'm really curious about where you find inspiration for the things that you're doing, and then how do you apply that, especially because I think we can be inspired by so many things that aren't related exactly to what we're doing. But so I'm really curious by what you're inspired and how you apply it.
Well, I'm inspired by a lot of things. I love art history and different periods. So I find a lot of inspiration in that. Art Nouveau and Art Deco are some of my favorite periods. So nothing like a little whiplash smoke, to to set my heart aflutter.
I just think we now have our new tweet. That was like that was perfect.
But otherwise, I think often there's always some aha moment with the clients that really helps inspire me and gel like an idea. So I'll give you an example. I have a client and they have a mid-century home. They want it to be a warm version of mid-century modern, but they want it kind of beachy too. And so that set me on this path about, using blues and green, but using them from different times of the year. So if you think of the sea at winter, it's a different kind of set of colors than a sea in summer, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what's pulling me along, making decisions about the various materials that will be used is that concept.
That's interesting. Because I wouldn't even think because I followed along, but I don't think I would have gone that degree. Like, just thinking about, oh, well, that season has this color. I mean, that all makes sense. I clearly didn't go to school for that. I'm like, it's pretty. Let's make that. What do you find, even outside of talking to clients, that you find inspiration in other places as well, like that are applicable? That just even like, I wonder if there's a translation about like, do you find other visual design, like even if you see, maybe some really interesting magazine that has some, the way that things are like photographed or whatever, does that translate also into interior design for you? Do you pick up things like that?
Yeah, one place that is kind of known for being an inspiration to interior design is actually fashion. Usually whatever's trending in fashion this year will be seen in interior design in like 2 to 3 years.
Really?
So I do pay attention to fashion because I want to see if there's something I can incorporate now and kind of be ahead of the curve,
How does that work exactly? Like, what's an example of something, how like that translates?
So it might be a color that's really popular this year that then gets translated into homeware stuff in a couple of years. I blame fashion on that lime green phenomenon that has just taken over the planet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So stuff like that.
That's interesting. So if people are thinking about like, just especially if there was like design folks that were listening to, especially people that are interested in interior design as a profession, or even stuff that, everybody that lives on Pinterest these days, what kind of stuff do you recommend? Like even just like how to look out for stuff or trends or where to get started with that?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a couple of magazines that I read pretty religiously. One is called, surprisingly enough, Interior Design.
Wait, what? How do you spell that?
I'll send you a link. And the other one is Dwell. Dwell is especially popular, here in California and in other places. But Dwell has a lot of ideas in it all the time. It's really a wonderful magazine.
Would you suggest that like just like flipping through, finding stuff, or especially for the person that's maybe interested in even starting that kind of career? Because I know Dwell, and Dwell's like, it's just actually just a really beautiful put together, magazine as well. Do you like, are there certain things that you like pick out of there, or like, is it just something you're attracted to, or are you looking for something specific?
It's a little bit of both. Some of it is that I have a need that I'm trying to source. Or some of it is just, oh, that was a really smart way of solving a certain kind of problem, and I'll, tear it out so I can, refer to it sometime. Or it'll prompt me and give me another idea for something else that I'm, trying to figure out.
Do you ever practice at home? Are you like for the house? Is there anything that you ever do at home, or when you want to try something out?
There is, but lately, so we were thinking about moving, and so everything has become rather neutral around here
Ah,
in anticipation of that. So, yeah. So, but there's some flourishes that are a little on the designy side.
yeah. I was just curious about a lot of us experiment with different things. We try stuff at home, and I thought, well, I wonder how far that went for you.
Yeah. I mean, the powder room is always a good place to get a little crazy because it's small and it's, you know,
Yeah,
easy to redo if you need to. But yeah, everything's pretty actually somewhat set. But you know how homes are. There's always a project going on.
totally. Okay,
Yeah.
what's your opinion on things like this is sort of like it's like pop culture time. What about like different shows and stuff that are like, just HDTV, things like that? Does that stuff make you cringe, or you're interested by that stuff?
Um, you know what? I haven't actually watched HGTV in a while, but what I like about it is that it has a full range of um, price points and taste levels, right?
Yeah.
It can show you like the do-it-yourselfer, like simple things, and it goes kind of all the way up to let's build it from scratch, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I kind of like that because I think it demystifies things for people. But on the other hand, everybody believes that they can have their kitchen remodeled in a week.
I totally believe that, especially those two brothers.
Yeah.
They're like, I mean, first of all, it's clearly scripted because they always surprise them with the first house that they can't afford. But what are they? The Property Brothers? That's who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which they crack me up. But I'm like, wait, you're gonna finish this in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Really? The whole house?
Yeah. And I love it when they put the prices. Like whenever I
Oh, right.
see the granite countertop and it's $1,500, I'm like, what? What currency are they using?
They meant for just this one square.
That's right. Just where the numbers are posted. Yeah.
Do you find that kind of stuff, like, even just without like interest, but is that helpful, do you think, to see some of that stuff to give you an idea? Like, I mean, did that even hit home for you before you even took a class? Or like, because like what even hinted towards you to take a class? I wonder if like influences like that were like, hey, maybe I should go try this.
Um, I don't know. Somehow I got a hold of the catalog and it was the very first class in their certificate series called Design Fundamentals. And that teacher, Brian Ruppel, see, I still know his name, who's also a fine artist. He taught the class in the most inspiring way possible, and I was sold. He had me at pinching and pulling.
Wow. Wow.
It was really a great experience, and that really set kind of the tone and the impetus to kind of continue to go through the series.
What's your favorite thing that you've learned so far, through the whole experience? Just because I think because it's still, yeah, I mean, you've been doing a lot of stuff for a while, but it's still, there's like, I know you're getting, is it lead accredited as well?
I am getting lead accredited. Yes.
Yeah. So I just think like you're continuing learning, but like has there been like any kind of standout things now that you've made this jump? You've obviously been fascinated by some stuff, but like what stood out for you now?
Well, I'll tell you, one thing I was a little worried about with this career um, was people saying, "No, I don't like that. Let's do this."
Hmm.
Because I thought that I would get too attached to the design, and it would need to be my voice, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, I really thrive on the collaboration and the working through adjusting this, that, and the other thing. I really find that really satisfying.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if that's just, do you think that's normal for, or kind of a standard thing that interior designers would go through? Or is it just a personal vibe for you?
I think it's personal. I think that uh, there are some designers where their signature they feel is very important. You would only hire them to
Hmm.
execute their signature.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of their way or no way.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's as much fun.
Yeah, I can see that because then it almost turns into a challenge for you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But do you ever get, I know you've had a lot of like good clients and collaborative, but is there any kind of clients that you like that aren't like that? Not that I'm looking for a horror story, but it's more about the, because we all have those. I'm just kind of curious about like, what's the speed bumps there in that kind of environment when you're working that kind of role? Where does it come up where you get something and you're like, yeah, that's never going to work?
Yeah, it's not just me. I think it's all the design fields have the same kind of problem with communicating value, right?
Mm.
So why should you move that wall? Why should I, buy a $7,000 sofa? What, what's the value, right? I think people have a hard time kind of understanding, what the long-term value of certain things you might suggest are.
That's interesting because I can see that. And is it because you feel like the client could almost see it as like, oh, that's just a design thing that you want me to do versus there's real value for me as the homeowner.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that because especially for the people that don't understand design or because there's principles and there's values that go into all that make it real. It's not just red looks really good with this color, like
Right.
I mean, I've dealt with that with graphic design, where I probably know enough when I'm working with a really good designer probably to piss them off, but not enough to go like, what's the value? Yeah, that's smart. That's good to know. So let me just ask this then. So we talked a little bit about, what, you would say like what kind of magazines, things to look at for people starting a career. Anybody about like just switch it around a little bit too. Anybody thinking about changing their career altogether? Like they're jumping ship into something else. Like, you stumbled on yours a little bit, but then realized, aha. I mean, it's closely related to, where your brain was at before.
Hmm.
But any kind of advice about, I'm really trying to make a transition or I'm just not really loving where I'm at and I'm ready to do something else. Any thoughts around that?
Um, well, I think first you really need to be honest with yourself. Um, so, when I was making my decision to leave, I realized that if I stayed, I'd still be doing the same kinds of things and not really learning anything new, and I would only be staying out of fear.
Oh,
And once I realized that, I was more afraid of being afraid
that's awesome.
than being out of work. And so that was a big part of it. But I think the other thing is being honest with yourself about what is realistic. And we kind of touched on this actually earlier that um, you might have a, a big dream, um, but you have to really do your homework and see what would it take to achieve that dream, and do I have that?
Mm.
So what's an example? So if I was 75 years old and decided I've always wanted to be an astronaut and that's what I'm going to do, I'm sure I could do the training, and yes, I'm sure, I could move forward. But would I be accepted into the program? Could I actually be an astronaut? That might not actually work. So maybe there's a way to, and this is what we talked about earlier, is to readjust that. How can I be in the space program but not necessarily be an astronaut, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I love that it's almost like think it all the way through and yeah, decide can you do that? And it's not just because when you first said that, I thought about like, do I have the willpower? Do I have the effort? Do I have whatever, the finance, and
Yeah, all those things too. Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't think about the other pieces of it. Like there may be gatekeepers along the way, which, hey, some things we can get through because like, when somebody says no, I'm going to still do it anyways. But some things like for example, like the astronaut. Well, there aren't really a lot of other options.
Right.
Like if I want to be a musician, I can just go do it. I can figure it out. I can search. I can learn. I can create my own career because there's not a spaceship for me to have to sign up for.
Right, right.
Yeah. So that's smart. I didn't think of it that way. Yeah. I don't even know if I plan my journeys out that way. But I'm like, oh, maybe I need to do a little bit more. I mean, I do the honest piece for sure, but it's it might even help me think about possible future blocks that I didn't think about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, hey, actually, how we talked earlier about this when I said, gosh, this starting the show was so much more work than I thought it was going to be. And you said, well, it's probably good you didn't know that beforehand. And right? Because I probably wouldn't have done it. And I love tons of it. But, if you start to think about more of that kind of stuff, you might spot out some things to maybe the gotchas, at least.
Yeah, or just to readjust.
Yep.
Right. Don't give up the dream, but adjust it so you set yourself up for being successful.
Yeah, exactly. And have the right dream. It makes it sound like, that's a dumb dream. Don't do it.
Right.
No, but it is. It's like, we have to just be smart about what you're looking for or what's really the right fit. It's also like, don't have just dreamer goggles on or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Smart. Wow. Oh my gosh. I feel like I learned. I was like, oh yeah, that was deep. I'm totally going to apply that. Oh my gosh, that's great. Well, I definitely appreciate you going through all of this. It sounds like you've been on, I love that you just looked at this like it was all about opportunities and you learned so much in it. And I think that's how it's better to look at life that way versus, I need to go after one thing versus, like, it's experience life and experience the pieces that come with it. But you're having such a good time, it sounds like, with the design and you're, right before a new chapter to it. That's exciting. So thanks for being on the show and talking through all this stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you, Christopher. This has been really fun, even though the cat doesn't understand why I'm talking to the computer.
Is the cat still staring at you?
Yeah, he's looking at me like, isn't it dinner time? And what are you doing? But he'll get over it.
So this is like our extra guest.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting because when you're living your life, you don't really think about it so much. So this has been fun to kind of, have to think about it a bit in a different way.
Yeah, it makes you reflect differently. I agree. Hey, well, for our listeners too, if they want to follow along with some of your design work or where you're going to go or things that you're going to do, is there a place online they can follow along?
There is. I have a website. It's AnnaHarrisDesigns, all one word, .com.
Great. And we'll list that in the show notes and also on the website as well, so they can get it, to it easily.
Okay.
And just something I just realized, this is ridiculous. I don't even think you know this. So I'm like not so secretly obsessed with Anna Faris.
Yes.
And I was like, look at that. Anna Faris. No wonder we're friends.
And we're both in love with Chris Pratt.
Exactly. That's so funny. I don't know. That's ridiculously silly, but I just noticed it. So anyways, there you have it. Well, it's been a lot of fun. I know we have lots to catch up on too, but I'm so glad we had this chat at least.
Yeah, no, it's been really fun. Thanks.
Now, over to you. Any thoughts or questions you'd like to share? Seriously, do you have any questions you'd like to ask me or the guest? We'll answer them and even get the guest to help us. So send us a message, use our Facebook page and email us there, or post a comment or question on the page, or tweet us at accidental.info using hashtag LivingYourJourney. You can find out more about all the guests, links to their sites and social channels, and even bonus content all at accidentalinformation.com. Now, a couple favors. Go subscribe to the show and you'll be the first to get the download before everyone else. Also, take just a couple moments and head over to the show in iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a quick review. Quick, easy, and I would love it. This totally supports us and it helps me bring in interesting guests each week and keeps the show going. Also, I love to read them and see what you guys are really thinking. Thanks for joining the conversation, and remember, Living Your Journey is available every Tuesday. Until next week. Thanks for joining, Anna. It's so good to have you on the show. Hello?
Hi.
Did I lose you?
I thought you were pausing for
No, the pause was before that.
Technical reason.
I was like, wait, is the cat staring at you again?
Well, he is, but now for a different reason.
That's awesome.